Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Roar Attack figure from the Mattel Jurassic World line, and we have the Baryonyx Chaos figure. This is the other member of the trio from Camp Cretaceous. I believe this was the only one we did not receive quite yet, so it is nice to have that final member of the Baryonyx trio from Camp Cretaceous released by Mattel, and it looks alright, you know. Definitely not the best and definitely not my favorite Baryonyx from Mattel, but I can't really say that for sure until I actually get it out of the package and take a look at it with the tail connected and, you know, all of its glory displayed before us. But I can definitely say that I'm not a huge fan of the coloration. Mostly this white that's kind of leaking down, because the white looks more like paint just kind of like leaking down the side of the figure that dried in a very awkward way. But it doesn't look like body color, and that's the thing that I'm noticing straight away with the figure. But aside from that, the paint looks pretty fun elsewhere. But again, we won't truly be able to tell until we actually get the figure out of the packaging and take a look at it. But as far as the box art goes, it's your standard Camp Cretaceous box art, and then we turn it around, kind of giving us a sneak peek of the Baryonyx. And again, the fact that we have the Roar Attack feature means we can position the dinosaur with its mouth in pretty much one of three different ways, which is definitely, actually, I guess 4 different ways, because you could have the mouth completely closed as well. But still a pretty fun action feature if it didn't just have that gaping hole at the top that's really ugly. And then down here we also have the Allosaurus and Ouranosaurus, which we have reviewed those here in the past on the channel. So let's pop this out of its box and take a look at it. So here is our Baryonyx, and he's got crooked legs. He's not standing correctly at all. There we go. Now we have our Baryonyx standing here before us. If I can again position the camera a little bit nicer. There. Okay, I think we're good now. So the Baryonyx definitely looks quite fun. It's not my favorite one, again, like I had stated earlier, and now having it out of the package, I can definitely confirm it's definitely not my favorite Baryonyx. I think my favorite would honestly be the very first Baryonyx from Mattel for the Jurassic World line. I don't know why, I just really, really like that one, but the coloration of this one looks pretty okay-ish, and in another similar situation to the Allosaurus, we have the paint that just kind of ends, but this time it does at least go back above the hip region, and then we have no paint past that point, but it doesn't look so weird on this one. And similar to the Allosaurus review, if you watched my review of that, you'll know how I was complaining about the fact that the arms were like a significantly bright color, and then the legs were a really dark color, and due to the fact that neither really had any difference of color in them, it just looked really awkward from the second half of the dinosaur back. But that's not the case with this Baryonyx. I feel like even though it lacks the paint application from the hip region back, it still does look really quite nice, and much nicer than the Allosaurus did. But again, the figure does look pretty fun, so let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look right now. So, I believe this Baryonyx is exactly the same sculpt as the previous Roar Attack Baryonyx, so there's no need to actually check out the sculpt or anything. If you are looking for a review that's filled with more actual attention to the sculpt, I will include a link in the description to the previous Baryonyx review. I believe that one was Limbo, and you can go ahead and check that review out to see more about the actual sculpt itself. But what we need to look at with this review would be just what's new with the figure, which is the paint application. And you can see straight away up here on the head, we have this really nice dark blue that kind of leaks down into the primary gray body color to the Allosaurus. And it does look really quite nice and natural. And we also have this lighter blue, and the lighter blue just kind of leaks all throughout as well, kind of running down here behind the eye, and then just all over the place up here on the top of the neck. Unfortunately, that blue then does taper off back here before we get into the back, which is a little bit of a downside. I would have liked to have seen more, but again, we're trying to recreate the Baryonyx from Camp Cretaceous, so obviously we need to make the paint application look similar to that Baryonyx, and I feel like Mattel did a decent job as far as that goes. We do have, again, some speckling throughout the gray, and you can see it in certain areas, like specifically here in the lower jaw. You can see it's like a very dark blue speckling, so it's kind of like this same color blue that we have up here, it seems, which sort of makes it look cool because it kind of looks like that darker blue is just kind of spotting all throughout the course of the figure, which I actually do really quite like. As far as the eyes, we have a yellow for the eyes, and it seems as though we actually have a black pupil. So it's very strange to me how Mattel has been going about the black pupil issue, where they're just giving certain figures the black pupil and certain figures they're not, like the Allosaurus didn't. It had like the dark green body color, behind the eye as far as the pupil goes, but this one, where we could have used this dark blue for the pupil, we actually have a black, so I can't make sense of it at all as far as what Mattel is trying to achieve, as far as some figures having black pupils, some not. I feel like we should give them all black pupils, but Mattel doesn't listen to me, it seems, so I guess we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and I don't really know what's going on. As far as the inside of the mouth goes, you can see we have a really nice purplish tone of color for the inside of the mouth, which is a nice realistic tone of color, pretty nicely textured tongue down here as well. The teeth are painted with kind of an off-white bordering on a yellow, and nothing looks terrible about the teeth. Maybe some of the teeth could have had a little more paint application to them because they're kind of cut short a little bit, but for the most part, I will say the teeth look pretty good, except for over here you can see a few like chips of the paint off, but it's actually mostly just this area up here where it seems as though some of the teeth have been kind of skimped out on in the paint department, but I don't think it looks bad, but it could have looked a little better. As we start to run back here into the back of the body, again, we have more of that dark blue that runs the course of the upper part of the back until we reach about the hip region where it just completely disappears altogether. But we also have sort of like a light gray right here on the underside of the blue, and it just kind of runs down here on the lower part of the blue, and it actually looks okay from up here. Initially, I was looking at it and I'm like, I kind of complained at the beginning of the review a little bit that it didn't look like actual natural body color. It looked more like paint, just kind of, sloppily left on the side of the figure. But actually having it up here in the light, it does look a lot nicer than I expected it to, and it doesn't look near as bad as I initially had thought it did. So that is definitely a plus. Let's check out the other side here. I think it's this side looks a little bit sloppier, but honestly, it doesn't look bad over here either. For the most part, I will say that white or light gray actually is definitely appealing looking on the figure and looks far nicer than I expected it to. We again have more of those speckles that are honestly everywhere on this figure. Like, look right here in the thigh. They are just everywhere, like so many, the entire course of the leg all the way down into the foot. These speckles are just insanely abundant on this one, probably the most speckling I've ever seen on one of the Mattel figures, but I actually really quite like the fact that it has so many. I feel like it definitely amps up the appeal factor of the figure, just giving it that little extra paint variation. Unfortunately, as per usual, we do not have nail paint on either the fingers or the toes. We do have speckles on them though, but it honestly doesn't really look like we even have a gloss coat on them like we sometimes get. So, no, not really. It doesn't look like there's anything at all going on with the actual toenails. Maybe a slight gloss coat, but it doesn't look as obvious or as nice as what we usually get. And that's really about it, honestly. There's no other paintwork that I can see anywhere. We do have a Jurassic Facts app code here if you would like to add this to your collection. However, if my camera would focus on it, for some reason it does not want to, but that's really about it. Again, paint-wise, there's nothing else new, so let's go ahead and check out the rest of the figure. So as far as the articulation goes, it's pretty much your standard as far as Roar Attack or specifically Baryonyx figures go, but we have articulation in the upper and lower jaw, which is something that I think is now only like, a Roar Attack thing. We didn't have that prior, but moving past that, we basically have the usual arm articulation forward and back, and then out away from the body. We also have leg articulation forward and back, out away from the body and back in. He actually can go pretty wide as far as that goes. And then we also have tail articulation, which can just go all over the place as well as swivel quite nicely. So that's really about it as far as the articulation goes. So for the action feature, sounded like a little bit of a T-Rex in there. That sounded more Baryonyx to me. There's a little Rexy again. So there's definitely some fun noises that we get with our Baryonyx, and I will say that it's weird the way that the figure is. If you look, if I move the camera back here, the legs have to be so far apart for them to actually be flat. Like, he's really got quite a wide gape on those legs when you actually want him to stand totally flat. The legs are further apart, I think, than potentially any other Mattel figure that I've ever had the opportunity to enter into my collection. But as far as a size goes for our Baryonyx, from the tail to the snout, you are looking at about almost 13¼ inches, or a little over 33 centimeters, closing in on 33 and a half. And then for a height, to the back here of the neck of the Baryonyx, you are looking at about the 5¼ range, or around the 13 centimeter area, maybe a little hair over. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Baryonyx Chaos figure, and you can see that just like with the Allosaurus, this Baryonyx is exactly the same size as all of the other Roar Attack style figures just like this. So if you again already have one Baryonyx from Mattel, you'll definitely know what the size is on this one. So this brand new and final member of the Baryonyx trio from Camp Cretaceous, which is Baryonyx Chaos, is a pretty nice figure. He has a very similar look to the initial Baryonyx from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Similar looking paint scheme, but slightly different as far as, you know, this current figure goes in comparison to the initial Baryonyx from Mattel. But he's not too far off, but I will say it does look pretty nice. Of course, the sculpt is fantastic. Mattel has one of the nicest Jurassic Baryonyx figures I think you'll ever see, no matter what company releases it. I've been a huge fan of the Baryonyx from the Mattel line, and that follows through with this figure here. It's just a gorgeously sculpted Baryonyx with just tons and tons of detail within, and definitely a very highly detailed figure overall. But the paint scheme here on this one, again, is pretty decent. It's not as nice as it could be, and that's something I think we could always say from Mattel. I don't know that there's ever been a figure that they've released where you can say, wow, the paint apps on this are just perfect, absolutely picture perfect, and it couldn't get any better. There's always room for improvement when it comes to the Mattel figures, but I don't think that's improvement that they're probably going to act on anytime soon, so we might as well just get used to what we are getting from Mattel as far as the paint apps go, and that's most of the time only half-painted dinosaurs. But again, with this one we have a primary gray body color with some nice dark blues and a lighter blue up there on the top that run up into the face, as well as some light grays that kind of leak down underneath the darker blues. And then that's really about it, honestly, aside from eye paint and the inside of the mouth. We don't really have any other coloration to the Baryonyx at all, but as per usual, it would have looked nicer had we had a little more paint application out onto the tail, as well as nail paint. Those are like the two biggest gripes, I would say, with every single Mattel release, would be those two little issues, that they could just improve the figures drastically if they added a little more paint out onto the tail and nail paint. It would just make such a huge improvement. But again, the figure does still look pretty fun and follows right in the same trend as all of the other Mattel figures as far as what we usually get for a paint application. The action feature is fun, and I do like the fact that we can again pose our dinosaurs and display them that way with the mouth open to, you know, one of basically 4 different distances, whether it's closed, or then there's 3 different areas where you can open it up to, which is really fun as far as displaying your figure. I definitely really like that aspect, but I hate the fact that there's a gaping hole on the top. But I honestly don't know any other way to achieve that action feature without there being kind of a gaping hole, so I can't really fault Mattel for that. And at least they are trying to continue to give us something new and fresh, as opposed to just releasing the exact same type of figure with the exact same type of action feature, just a newly repainted version. Like, I can absolutely give them props for trying to innovate and continuing to give us something a little bit different, even if it's not always the best thing in the world, especially right here with the big gaping hole in the top. It's still nice to see them trying, and it's still a pretty fun looking Baryonyx with some pretty awesome articulation, a really cool action feature with some fun noises, and a decent looking paint scheme, but an absolutely awesome sculpt as well. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to Amazon where I purchased mine. Again, just like usual with Amazon, they're so hit or miss with the Mattel figures. It may be in stock, it may not be. One way or another, though, I recommend checking it out and potentially ordering it if it does come back into stock, or picking it up if it shows up in stores. Either way, though, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.